And what's going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning back into the channel today. I'm Zach Davis. Appreciate you joining me. Frank Turek, reacting with full preterism at the University of Tennessee about a week and a half ago. I want you guys to check this out and see what kind of responses we get. See if we get anything that refutes anything. See how familiar these folks are with this. We're going to look at Frank Turek, and then later on he brings in the leading apologist at the University of Tennessee. And we'll see what she can do with preterism and what kind of responses we can give to this interaction. Now, kudos to them for having to interact, but it's a public forum, so they have to. So let's check it out.
Yes, sir. What's your name?
Hey, sir. I'm Judah.
Judah.
Yep.
From the tribe of
Yeah, the terrible
Judah.
dude.
Go ahead.
So I kind of have grew up dispensationalist and with this futuristic mindset of Jesus physically coming back. But I've recently come to a different point of view. To preface, throughout the Old Testament, you have this day of the Lord that happens. And a lot of the times there's time statements like near, soon.
You're going to have to be a little louder, Judah, for the people in the back. Unfortunately,
Sorry.
that mic is not
I have
amplified.
to do that. Okay.
So go ahead.
So there's time statements like
Yeah.
near, soon, quickly,
Yeah.
about day of the Lord,
Right.
like Babylon, Assyria.
Uh-huh.
And then when we get to the New Testament with the Olivet Discourse in Matthew 24, and even Revelation, with those time statements also being soon, near, quickly, at hand, if I'm a first century Jew or even a non-Jew, a Gentile, if I'm reading these New Testament documents, would you think that they think that that event would happen soon and quickly, given the destruction of the temple in 70
I think the
AD?
Olivet Discourse in Matthew 24, there's a near-term fulfillment and a long-term fulfillment. The near-term fulfillment was 70 AD. The long-term fulfillment is going to be when Jesus comes back.
Okay, we're going to make 8070 a type, according to Frank here. Now let's look for the whole video whenever we see Frank give us the verse that tells us about the future beyond 8070 comings that are here.
So where does he specify the second fulfillment?
Well, this is common among New Testament prophecies, as you know. There's normally a near-term fulfillment, so the people at that time can understand it came true, but then there's a longer-term fulfillment as well.
100% wrong. Please hear me here. 100% wrong. He says that oftentimes in the New Testament, there's a near-term fulfillment and then a future, far-off fulfillment. Friends, that is one of the biggest issues in understanding the New Testament and the Bible. That's a true statement if he would have said, in the Old Testament, there are oftentimes an immediate near-term fulfillment and then a future far-off fulfillment. Jesus says explicitly in Luke 21:22, these are the days of vengeance, which all things written in the Old Testament are to be fulfilled. You do not type things when you have the reality present. And the reality is Jesus in the New Covenant in the first century. Let me give you an example. David was told when he dies that his son would sit on his throne and build a house for the name of God. That's true for Solomon. He's the son of David that reigned and built a physical temple on the throne in Jerusalem after David died. But Peter in Acts chapter 2 applies the ultimate fulfillment of that to Jesus when he was raised from the dead and is seated on the throne reigning from the new spiritual temple, Mount Zion in heaven. You do not type things in the New Testament. Friends, what's greater than Jesus? Absolutely nothing. What Frank Turek just said is 100% absolutely an error, and it will mess you up reading the Bible if you take that approach. Let's keep going.
Take a look at in Matthew 24, where Jesus says, when you see the armies descending on Jerusalem, flee to the mountains. Well, that's what the Christians did in 70 AD.
Right.
Just about all of them escaped the destruction. But if he's talking just about the end of the world, does it make any sense to flee to the mountains? No, of course not, right? The mountains are going to be gone too. So there's a near-term fulfillment and a long-term fulfillment. So when he says these things are going to happen before this generation passes away, I think he meant the generation at the time. That's the natural reading there. Right. And about 40 years after he said that, that's when it happened. One generation.
Great. Frank's a preterist. Of some degree, he wouldn't say that, but it sounds like it. Here we go, Frank. Give us a verse now. We want a verse for the future fulfillment past 80-70.
But there's also a longer term fulfillment when Jesus comes again. So I think it's both.
Okay.
All right.
Do you know where he says that?
Says
though?
what?
About a long term, because here's the thing with dual fulfillment for me,
Uh-huh.
at least, and how I see it is, why can't there be a third, a fourth, or even some symbolic ones from the Old Testament, also third and fourth in our day today?
Well, clearly not everything in Matthew 24 has happened. So there has to be
So did Jesus
a sense that
lie?
there's no, he's talking about this aspect. And look, we'd have to read the whole thing. We don't have time to read the whole thing.
Sure,
in front, right? Okay.
Yeah.
We don't have to read the whole thing, Frank. Just give us one verse that's in the future. I bet if Frank gives one verse that's in the future, the guy asking the question could pin him and say, no, here's why that happened in the first century. Friends, if some of you are new to eschatology, maybe you're new to the idea that there are New Testament fulfillments that happened in the first century in 70 AD, let me just encourage you with this. Jesus said everything would happen in this generation, which is 40 years according to Hebrews 4. By the end of the New Testament, you get soon, at hand, judges at the door, about to happen quickly. The reason that's true is because all these events are talking about the destruction of the old system that was in play whenever these things were said. He's got to give a verse that says, okay, this happens post AD 70. You're not going to hear one, spoiler alert, in this whole exchange and interaction.
So some things happened in 70 AD. Some things have yet to happen in the Olivet Discourse. But
Okay.
he said this is going to happen before the end of the age. The end of the age
Right.
was when the temple went down.
Y'all hear that? The end of the age was when the temple went down. Frank, you've not thought about eschatology enough, brother. The end of the age, the resurrection happens. The resurrection and the end of the age occur at the second coming of Jesus. You just gave the whole farm away, buddy. This is why Ken Gentry splits the questions in the discourse and places the end of the age in mine and your future, because he knows if you give up the end of the age, it is over. It's in the bash session on Frank Turek, but in terms of eschatology, these guys have not thought this through. This is way, 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 way beyond their reach. They're not ready for this. They're not ready to interact with this. They haven't thought enough about this. He really doesn't realize what he just said whenever he gave that up. So that's monumental when he says the end of the age is 80, 70. The perfect comes at the end of the age. He just gave everything away.
But then he's going to come again at a later time. So
Okay.
I think it's both. But
All right.
anyway,
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Judah. By the way, you should know this. You're from the tribe of Judah.
Did y'all hear a verse anywhere? This is just Frank saying, well, it's got to be topological. Why? Because his presupposition and paradigms for futurism make him automatically think one day that the second coming of Jesus ends the cataclysmic physical planet. And that's not the case at all. It's nowhere to be found anywhere in the text.